Peter, you say you fix scripts that are sick. What are some common illnesses of most scripts?
90% of the time, it's about a hero who doesn't have a change, a compelling change. The hardest job for a script writer, and actually for a producer or a director, anybody involved in a story, is to make a really cool character that you might think is great. You might have a really cool setting. Wow, that's neat. We're in the South Pacific. You've never seen that before. And this is a cool character. But they don't know how to change him, how to take him from one place to another. So time and again, what I do is talk about that, point out this guy isn't changing, or if he is changing, it's not believable. And so when a bad movie is bad, often it's because this hero's change is not there, it's not real, it's not compelling. And sometimes you'll have a wonderful setting and you'll have a wonderful hero, but he just doesn't change correctly. There's a script that I teach called Killing on Carnival Row by a great writer named Travis Beacham. Blacklist writer a couple of years ago. This script propelled him, got him a lot of jobs. Now Travis Beacham is a fabulous writer, but he's not perfect. And what I teach in my classes is this writer got his notoriety by doing a couple of things wonderfully well. He gave us a world in this movie that's fantastic fantasy. And in fantasy, half the job is creating a real world you've never seen before, an original world, like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. But the other half is to give us compelling characters who change. And we have a great character in that script, but he doesn't go through a change that has the depth or believability that really would make us want to watch him all the way through. Now, Travis Beacham is a genius at what he does, but most writers have strong suits and suits that aren't as strong. And character change has to be at the heart of almost every kind of movie, unless you're making a superhero movie where the hero doesn't have a change. And other things have to happen there. But so it's a long-winded way of telling you that. To change your character in a story is everything. And that's what I do if it's not there.
Let's talk about a character that does not change within a story versus a character that does change within a story. I'll take a hypothetical. Let's say we have a female. She's 30 years old. She lives at home with her parents. She's a bartender. She makes great money and meets many interesting people, but her character does not evolve or change in any way.
Well, let's say that her change needs to be, let's make it a personal story. Let's say that she doesn't have love. Okay, so she's wounded. Most great Hollywood movies are about a wounded hero given a chance to change. Okay, that's what they are. So let's say that the reason she's wounded is that her wound, and it's always about a wound in a story that's any good. We all have wounds. I call them core wounds. Our parents usually gave them to us. So let's say that her wound is that she can't connect to anybody. Okay, she can't be intimate with anybody. She just doesn't feel it. So she's a bartender, so really she doesn't have to ever have intimate relationships. She just has lots of relationships with the people at the bar. But they never go any further than that, okay? If she has any intimacy at all, well, she doesn't. And she's not intimate with her family either, okay? So what's going to change her? What's going to make her change? Well, you have people who are going to tear her wound wider open. Let's say that that's the owner of the bar who doesn't want her to change at all, loves the way she is, and tells her now, though, that, hey, we're changing our bar. Our bar is going to become a coffee house, and it's going to be really important that you talk to the people who come in. That's going to be, as a barista, I want you to really establish friendships, and it's all about that. And by the way, here comes someone who's a consultant who's going to help you change and be more friendly and also more intimate with the clients. Well, she really will hate that. She'll hate that. She'll want to quit, but she can't quit. She makes so much money doing this. So then you're going to have also a person on the other side. You're going to have let's call her an impact character who's a relative, who says to her, hey, your sister's getting married. And I'm making this a personal story. Your sister's getting married, and your sister wants you to come to the wedding, and she also wants you to help me make this card up that it's a whole family and everybody's in it. And our heroine resists that too. No, I don't want to do that at all. I don't want to be involved in the family. I don't even know these people. So right there you have this personal setup where you have a girl with a core wound who's I can't be intimate, and you have her put in a position where she's going to be forced to have to be intimate, or she's going to wind up in a tragedy. And then you give a villain into the story. And the villain is a guy who is just as disconnected from people as she is. And he tells her, you know what, let's just have sex, nothing else, no intimacy at all. And she says, great, that's fantastic. Oh, I finally found the person of my dreams. But as we get into the second act, she begins to fall in love with this guy. And she also begins to realize when she's in that bar that she's beginning to feel the lack of intimacy, and it's hurting her that she can't connect to people. So she's learning from this person who's there as a consultant how to connect because she's bonding with her. At the same time, she's falling in love with this villain who is gonna now tell her when she reaches out to him, I don't want to be with you. In fact, I've got a family, so goodbye. That's gonna push her to change, to heal, to reach out, to understand she needs intimacy. So in the third act will be all about her helping her sister's wedding, reaching out when her sister, say, goes into crisis and says, suddenly I have cold feet, I don't want to get married. Now our heroine's going to have to minister to her and say, wait a minute, I think you should, because intimacy is good. I've just learned it's good, and I'm going to tell you, one of the times in your life you've been happiest, haven't they been with other people? So she's actually learned through pain and learned through the fact of being rejected by someone just like her, a mirror, that she does need intimacy, that she does need to reach out and be with people. Now that's a very small story, very emotional, intimate story. In the end, she reaches out to her family, but she doesn't have to fall in love. This is an indie movie. This is a cool kind of movie. All she has to have is a small change toward understanding, I need intimacy. And in fact, that's the story of Up in the Air. That's a very famous movie with George Clooney. It's all about, and it's a character study. It's just about this guy who's disconnected from people, who, by being pushed by villains and also pushed by helpers, learns how to become connected to people. Now, if it was a superhero story, or if it was a tragedy, in the end, she wouldn't learn that. She wouldn't have a change. She'd try to change, but then because she fell in love with someone who was a bad teacher, she would be so crushed that in the end, she retreats and decides she's not going to love, she's going to go back to the bar, and there's no movement at all. That's a tragedy. In fact, that's the story of The Wrestler. That was a great movie a few years ago. Tries to change, looks like they're going to change, but has a mentor that's so bad that when the mentor rejects them and moves away, they simply fall back into their old patterns. And in The Wrestler, he goes back to wrestling and he dies. So you can build the story either way. It's all about who's there on the journey with them, impacting them, that tells you and shows you and them whether or not they're going to be able to heal and change, or if they're going to fall back into a tragic end.
Peter, let's talk about the first step in writing a screenplay.
Yeah, the first step is what turns you on. That's always what it is. You should never write to the market. The market will always horrify you. Right now what's selling are superhero stories to the studios. But if you don't like writing superhero stories, you shouldn't say, oh, well, I'm going to write one anyway, because you'll fail. You have to write from passion. In my experience, yes, even writers who are professionals. You write from what you love, and you write from what embarrasses you, and you write from your core wounds. We all have things that we love to talk about, and those come from our core wounds. And I say every storyteller is wounded, and they're trying to tell a story to heal that wound. We all have a dozen core wounds. I'm ugly, my mother didn't love me, I'm badly socialized, no one understands me, I go to a party, I can't talk to anybody, no one will listen to me, I'm lonely, I'm alone, I can't reach out, I'm married but I'm not happy because I really can't be myself. There's all these wounds we all have, and we carry them inside ourselves. That's really what we're always writing about, always. And this is true for untherapized writers who are very successful, even if they've never looked at a psychologist's couch, and they laugh at this. When I work with them, turns out what they're writing about always is their core wound. So ask yourself as a storyteller, what am I interested in? What are the movies I love? I guarantee you when you do that, you'll find out that is your place where you need to start. Are you interested in love? No, I'm interested in computers. Well, then you might want to write a sci-fi movie because you're sort of mechanicized and that's your bliss. But I guarantee you that comes from a core wound too. So you must start with what excites you, and then shaping it is just a matter of, after you've done a passion draft, what I call just a draft of whatever you want your story to be about. It could be a paragraph, it could be a line, it could be 50 pages. Then it's time to think about, how do I want to shape this? Because the shape is always going to be the same. If it's a movie or a television show, the shape will always be the same. And learning what that shape is your job as a screenwriter, is your job as a television writer. But it must have come from your passion. I always ask my class, stand up right now and tell me the most embarrassing thing about yourself you could ever tell anyone, the thing that would make you cringe horribly if anybody knew it. Can you stand up and do that? Of course, no one will. So I do. I stand up and I say, look at my face, and when you look at, and I don't want you to shout this out, but when you look at my face, pick out the worst feature in my face and the best feature. Don't tell me, because I did a Korean television interview a little while ago, and the guy goes, you have a giant mole on your cheek. And I'm like, well, I didn't really want to know that. But just tell me, but just have it in your head. What's my best feature and my worst feature, okay? Now, most people pick one thing out and then the other, and then they start kind of, oh, I don't want to tell them. I know what it is. Now I say, okay, now I'm going to tell you a secret about myself, something really embarrassing. When I was a teenager, I had this problem, and it was a very embarrassing problem. I had something called body dysmorphia. And I don't know if you know what that is, but it makes you feel like you either have something too big or too small about your appearance. I thought that my lips were the size of Mick Jagger. So that when I would go into a room, I thought everyone was staring at my lips. They were huge. I'd knock people over with them. I wouldn't kiss a girl in high school because I was afraid my lips would get wet and then they would look even bigger. So here's what I did about that. All these things came out of that wound in high school for me. One, I wore white chapstick, okay, which made me appear I was wearing lipstick. Now I had long hair and I was in a band. So every time someone would look at me, I'd be thinking, wow, they're looking at my lips, they're huge. No, they were looking at the fact that dude has long hair and he's wearing lipstick. He must be gay. That's not what I thought. I would also eat my lunch in the bathroom because I didn't want people to see my wet lips. So you see that this one wound, oh, by the way, I got therapy, I'm over it now. But this one wound was motivating all these things they did. I wouldn't have a girlfriend. I was a pretty good looking guy in high school, but I couldn't do it because I actually did have some, but it was a horrible experience because every time I'd kiss them, I'd have to use the white chapstick. So you see where I'm going. When I tell people this story, they're like, first of all, they're sort of uncomfortable, and then they kind of want to laugh, and then they're just interested because it's true. Anything you tell about yourself that's true, that's embarrassing, is fascinating to an audience. All great story comes from these kinds of confessions, I call them. This is a device you use to make your hero compelling. It's a confession of some embarrassment that you had in your life. We love to see that because we're all embarrassed. We all feel these wounds. We all have them. And when we see them in a story, we recognize them as real, and we love that person, and we want that person. We're rooting for that person. Every great story starts with a character wounded like this, unless it's a superhero. That's a separate genre. That has their own rules. But most of the movies you love have a hero who's wounded, and it comes from the writer himself and the wounds that he has and how he tries to compensate for those. That's the physical manifestations in the story of his behavior. Me hiding in the bathroom, me wearing white chapstick. I played football, but I wore white chapstick. Contradictions. Why? I was a big guy, but long hair, lipstick, and I didn't know it. I thought people were staring at me because of my lips. No, they weren't. So all these things you don't know about yourself, learning them is a story. That's what makes great story.
So if we're fascinated by someone who's telling us something that embarrasses them.
Yeah. It has to be true, though.
That's true. The person who pretends to be too perfect, who deflects it and says, oh, there's nothing, I'm not ashamed of anything. Do we then naturally not like that person in the story?
We will love them if we see why they say that instantly. Okay. For instance, there's a movie. Do you know Jerry Maguire? Do you know the movie at all?
Yes, love it.
Okay. So when we start out Jerry Maguire, we see Tom Cruise and he's perfect. He's in a suit. He looks great, like Tom Cruise always says. He's an agent. And the very beginning of the movie, he's just as sexy as he can be, but he's at the bedside of one of his players. He's an agent, a sports agent, and he's a guy who can't connect with anybody. So we'd think, well, this guy's an a-hole, right? We're not going to like him. What happens in the first 2 minutes of that movie? When we have somebody like that, we want to punch him hard and make him change. And what happens is, within 2 minutes in that movie, the little kid that is the son of the boy, of the man who's in the bed, knows that Jerry Maguire is a jerk who doesn't really care about his dad, and he says, my dad's got to quit playing football. He's had concussions. Are you going to help him quit? Jerry Maguire says, hey, your dad, nothing could make him quit. Super Troopers, nothing. And he answers his phone, and the kid says to him, hey, you know what? F you. And when he sees that, it's like a slug to the heart. And the next thing we see him do is, I got home that night and I realized my life is a sham. All I'm doing here is for nothing. It's just for money. I've got to change. And he writes this thing called a mission statement. And now we're with him because this is a guy who has been an a-hole, but now he's seen it. He's confessed it to us on the screen and he wants to change. That's why we follow him. So you can take someone who's a complete jerk and you can make us love him if you show this, often through confessional, what his problem is and that he's trying to change. That's how you make an unsympathetic character sympathetic. So many writers get this note back from the producer. You hear he's not sympathetic. That's how you make him sympathetic. You show us his wound quickly. Another quick example, if you don't mind. Do you know the movie Superbad? Okay. Jonah Hill, fat boy in it, very unsympathetic, treats girls like meat. Then he confesses to his friend in the cafeteria that when he was a little kid, he drew pictures of penises, and he was horribly embarrassed when these pictures came out. And he also confesses to the girl that he's not good enough for her. So even though this guy's a jerk, we're with him through the movie because he's exposed his core wound and we see he's trying to change. Bad movies don't do that. Most movies are bad, by the way. 70 to 80% of films that come out do not have this compelling change. It's my job as a story doctor to try to put that into story because that's why audiences respond. That's how they respond.
Peter, advice to someone working on their first script.
I would say that you must be super passionate about your story. You must be totally in love with your story like nobody you've ever been in love with, like no animal or pet or human being or house or car or anything you've ever been in love with. If you're not in love like that, and you'll know, then drop it and do something else. Either write another story or don't write at all. Because in my experience, the thing that makes people succeed in this business is persistence. I know it sounds like something a coach would say in football, and it's a cliche. Guess what? It's totally true. If you aren't in love with a story, you're going to be living with that story for 6 months or a year or two. Now, there are some people in my business who say, write a script in 8 weeks, write a script in 10 minutes. That's very seductive, and they sell a lot of DVDs. Never works. Now, you can outline your story in 5 minutes. I can help you. I can tell you, wow, look here, you've got this, 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 and this. There's your 3 acts. But it's my job to tell the truth about how a story works. You are going to be working on this story for weeks or months to get a draft. And then you're going to be told, unless you are William Shakespeare, you're going to be told that there's a lot of problems and you're going to have to do another draft. All along this process, writers fall out because they think it's going to be a week, or they think I could do this in 10 days. I got this story in me completely. I'm just going to write it down and I'm going to sell it. And I'm going to live in Malibu. In my experience, that literally never happens, but it's not good sales to say that. But I'm here not to give a sales pitch. I'm here to tell you the truth. So if you're in love, you will stick things out, right? When we're married, sometimes there's places where things aren't all that great. But we love the person, we're passionate about the person, we're going to stick it out. That's just like writing. You have to know that this process is going to take time. If you aren't prepared for that, then you will drop out, you will fail. It is a matter of having the passion and the confidence, because you're also going to be told it's bad. Almost all the writers I work with that are super successful are people who can be told they suck repeatedly and simply go, you're not right, and I'm going to work again. Great example. I have a friend who's extremely successful now on television. A few years ago, she wrote her first movie script. She was a stand-up comic. And this script got 3 huge actresses, all vying to play the lead. In fact, they all 3 ended up doing it. They came to her house to live with her, to see how she lived. The script sold for an enormous amount of money. She was just on cloud 9. Movie was made, came out, worst movie in history. Critics eviscerated it. What did she do? She played us the tapes of the critics saying cruel things. She laughed at them. She went back to her desk the next day. She started writing again. It totally brushed off her back, and now she works for one of the best, most respected television shows on cable. There are critical respect as well. So it is about, because she's passionate about story, she's passionate about persistence, and that's what she does. That's the secret.
On the topic of confessionals about embarrassing moments, what's something about screenwriting that you're almost embarrassed to admit that took you so long to figure out?
Me personally? Yeah. That I'm no good at it. The reason that I'm a teacher and a consultant and a story doctor is that my big secret is I don't enjoy writing screenplays. I tried for a while to do it, but it's not my thing. If poetry paid, I'd be in the chips, because I'm a poet. That's what I love to write. And I also like to write novels. But years ago, the reason I became what I am is I failed to complete a screenplay. It got huge interest, and I realized at the end of it, I don't like this form. It's just not for me. I love analyzing it. I love understanding how it works. I love helping other people do it. But I don't enjoy sitting down every day and writing in the screenplay form. It's not my thing. I love to doctor and to help other people do it. That's just my thing. We all have our thing. So that's my thing. So that's sort of my embarrassing secret is this is a craft I adore analyzing and teaching other people about that I myself don't enjoy doing. That's kind of embarrassing for somebody who works in this field, but it's the truth. And it's sort of been the wound that pushed me into deeply understanding it, because I did so much want to understand how it worked, because I thought that would be the way in for me to really do it well. But it turns out it didn't give me great pleasure to actually work in this form.
How long did it take you to figure this out?
Well, I started really story doctoring about 13 years ago, and that's after this big failure to. I had a story idea that got enormous interest, and it was, well, we're on our way. This is the dream, and then I couldn't complete it, and then so I had crashed and burned, and then I started thinking, why couldn't I finish it? How does story really work? And as I started looking at how story worked, I understood this is my passion. I want to understand it so I can show other people how it works and how to do it, but I don't enjoy doing it. And that took like 3 or 4 years to really just sort of admit to myself. But all the time I was starting to get great joy from helping other people with their scripts. And then, as I said, I've read over 7,000 scripts, so I knew what these patterns were. I developed this idea, this analytical tool called the BMOC that everyone started to love. And it's a way of writing around an insight about your hero, which is about the wound. And as I started doing this, I got hired by more and more people, and I just began really getting passionate about helping them understand and bring to their story what I'd learned about great story, all great hit story. And that became sort of my passion. I still write poetry.
When you say you weren't interested in the form, was it also sitting at the computer alone and being sort of your own taskmaster?
No, I'm good alone. It was, look, screenwriting is a little bit like doing chemistry. Or math, or haikus, let's call it, because I'm a poet. I don't know if you know what a haiku is. It's a very particular form. You have to have certain number of syllables in this line, certain in this line. That's what screenwriting's like. So you've got to learn this pattern. It's very precise. It's not like writing a novel, although I teach that too. And boy, if you want to be free form and not worry so much, write a novel. Although you still need that character change. But a screenplay is very particular. And television, which is what I do more now than movies, because TV is where so much great creative stuff is happening today, is even more regimented, right? Even though on cable you can tell a story now in double hours. One of my clients got a note from a producer I've never heard before, which was, can you make the pilot longer? But even so, even though television is revolutionizing the way we tell stories in a Chekhovian way, getting longer and longer, like the Russian novel of the 19th century, and that's why you know it's great. There's still this A, B, C, D, E, F plot structure that's very specific that you must do, that even the hippest guys like Vince Gilligan have to use in Breaking Bad. This plot structure is rigorous. So that I chafed at. That I didn't like. I don't want it. I don't want to have a second act where all this happens. Nope, that's not for me. I'm a stupid rebel at heart. So the form was so precise that for me, I didn't enjoy fitting my vision into it, even though I knew how to do it. Didn't enjoy it. Just not my thing. But I love helping other people do it. And I love studying how it works and how it changes. And it's changing all the time. My God, in the last 3 years, movies have changed enormously. You can't talk about things like 30, 60, 90 anymore. Movies are shorter. The studios have taken over with their superheroes. That's a whole different discipline I haven't talked to you about. But it's a particular discipline. And it doesn't give me pleasure to do that. I forgot the question, but anyway, I guess I answered it.
Do you remember the day that did you have like an aha moment and, scripts pages went flying and said, this is it. I'm going to be it.
I knew when I had this big insight about how all great movies are structured. I knew no one else had ever discovered that. That was my E equals C squared moment. Because this insight I had helped so many writers, and it became sort of the central thing I still talk about today. There's 4 points in every movie story when a hero is asked to change, when a hero's core wound is put to the test. And that pattern is there virtually from everything from Star Wars to Pulp Fiction. And when I discovered that, it was like, wow, this is cool. This I can give to writers. And it helps writers enormously, this rhythm, this pattern. Every great story has it. And I don't think anybody really discovered it before. So that moment was when I thought, if I can just get that, and that's kind of what I'm writing a book right now about. And that's helped a lot of writers. So that was the insight that really made me realize this is for me, helping people understand how to tell their story in this rhythm. And it works for television too.
Can we talk about what a writer goes through comparing and contrasting how working on a screenplay the first week varies from working on it the last week?
It's much more fun the first week. It's sort of like, again, falling in love. I always use that analogy. My God, it's fantastic. You can't get enough of the person. You can have sex every day. You're always with them. Everything you do with them is fantastic. Just looking at them, you're like, oh my God. And then, as you continue to work on it, it's still extraordinarily pleasurable, but things start propping up, right? How do we live? What practical considerations? Or maybe you start to see some things about them that, you've got to work with, you have to live with. So that's really like writing a script. You have this huge passion for it, But then as you begin to form it into this commercial form, right? This is a commercial art form. And but that's delightful. Let's take if you have a vanity license plate, we have a lot in California, you got to fit your message in this vanity license plate in 7 letters, right? Every commercial, but the delight of it is that you have this constraint of this 7-letter form. It's witty to figure out that, let's say I saw a Corvette license plate the other day, vanity on the 405, big Corvette, and the vanity license plate said 3 inches. So I thought that was very funny, right? It's funny, ha. Why is it funny? Well, if you'd had 80 letters to say it, I have a really tiny penis, maybe that's a little funny, but it's not nearly as funny as 3 inches, right? So it is the constraints of the commercial art form, the delight we take in fitting our story ideas into this constraint, the delight the audience takes in seeing it in that form. So when we constrain, though, we must discipline and we must shape, and that's where it gets dicey for writers. Their second act is a completely different story from the first and the third act. How do we do that? Well, it's a completely different story, but it's related to Act 1 and 3. Most writers get in trouble in their second act because they got a great beginning, a great ending, but there's a whole 60 minutes in the middle. They don't really know what's going on. So it must be related to the story, but it's involved with a different storyline. So all these things go into movie scripts, and that's where you almost need 2 talents. Look, I think screenwriting is as hard as brain surgery. In fact, I think it's a little harder. And the myth is that in Hollywood, it's full of stupid people. Dumb people who've just stumbled into their success. They're smoking a spliff by the pool in Malibu. Oh, that's a good script. Let's do that one. And then here comes more money. In my experience, the smartest people I've ever met work in Hollywood. It's a myth that it's full of dumb, angry, jerky people. And it's a myth Hollywood peddles because it's fun. People want to believe that. Entourage is based on that. Other movies are based on that, but it's just not true. Hollywood's full of the smartest people I've ever met. And by the way, a lot of them are really highly moral too. Again, that's not what they peddle because that doesn't sell tickets. People want to believe Hollywood's evil and stupid. That's fine. They can believe that. But it's not. So when you're writing a story, you have to, it's extremely difficult art to conquer. You've got to have at least 3 gifts. You have to have a gift for telling a big story. You have to have a gift for telling a story inside a scene. That's a completely separate art. And then you have to have a gift for putting the 2 together in a constrained time. Those are 3 separate gifts. It takes a while to learn them. You must have talent too. So none of this is to discourage anybody from doing this, but I want you to understand that this art is an art that isn't going to come to you all as just a big package that you can just sit down and write it all out. In my experience, most of the time, the writers I work with that are really successful are lacking maybe one of those 3, or they have maybe 2 and a little bit of the third, but they don't have it all. So they have a process that they have to go through to learn that last gift. And it can take them 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years to do that. Very rare that someone just sits down and their first script that comes out is a commercial hit. It does happen. There's a guy that I've worked with that did do that. But he's an extraordinary exception. He's a guy that has made two hit scripts, one of them in dispute with the director, so I'm not going to give you his name, but you'd know the movies if I told you. But he's the only guy I've ever met who just sat down and produced this golden egg, his first bump out of the gate. And Shakespeare did it. Apparently they say Shakespeare never blotted a line. I think Marlowe says that about Shakespeare. He never had to go back and do a rewrite. But 99% of the geniuses, quote unquote, I work with, they do rewrites. They do a lot of rewrites. Ron Bass will obsess on a script for months before he lets it out of his sight. And that's the general rule. So it's a difficult craft that takes extraordinary discipline to achieve, usually.
And toward the end is where most people call it quits?
Yeah. You know, when I work with students, and I love beginners, I work with beginners more than anybody else. And beginners are always saying to me, when can I sell this? Am I going to be able to sell this next week? Am I going to be able to sell this the week after this? When is this done, Peter? That's what they want to know. When am I through? And I say to them, you're the only one that can answer that question, because it's up to you. How hard do you want to work? How hard do you want to work? How much time do you want to put into it to sell it? And this is a field where the success rate is low, in the sense that I think last year 160 spec scripts sold in Hollywood. There are probably 20,000 submitted. So think about that. That's not to say you shouldn't do it, because if you have a dream and passion, you can get it done. I've seen it done. I just had a student sell 2 scripts to a major studio. Now, he's very talented. Vladimir is very talented, but he's also been working at it for 4 years. So so many people who market script writing classes, and this is just a marketing thing, and I totally get it. I'll probably do it too. Book coming out, which is, hey, come with me, 5 minutes to a fabulous story, right? And that's true in the sense that, oh, I sketched it out. God, thank you, Peter. But it's not going to be a sold script for a while, generally. It just takes a lot of work. So that those last few the last few polishes of your first draft, you need help. You need inspiration. That's where I come in with my spiritual cocaine, and I give you notes that can help you sort of get reinvigorated about the story. Why'd you want to do it in the first place? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you need inspiration along the way. I like to give that too. But yes, that's the truth of it. That's how it really works.
So again, bringing back the screenplay process to a relationship, just like someone who might have a fear of commitment in a relationship, many people out there. What about when things get tough with that rewrite and they're starting to see the cracks of this whole dream kind of fall apart? Who are the ones that actually stay in for the long haul, even though they might have that tendency?
Often it's narcissists. Often it's people with big egos. I'm just telling you the truth that I've observed.
Yeah.
It's people who really think they're interesting. A lot of people fail at things because they see too clearly. Oh, look, here's the odds. And there's a great movie here where it says, don't tell me the odds, right? So in my experience, and this is true of the incredibly talented woman I told you about earlier, had that movie that's failed so spectacularly, but she just bounced back from it. They often are people who are very confident about who they are, very confident that they've got a talent, almost impervious to people going, you suck, because everybody gets told you suck at the beginning, and most people hear it and go, you know what, I guess I do, and they quit. Everybody gets told it, though. Even the ones that are really talented get told it. But the ones that don't hear it, or the ones that just go, yeah, I don't suck, I'm good. That arrogance, that confidence, or whatever you want to call it, it might be, it might be a neurosis. Maybe it's because they're sick. I don't know. But that's, in my experience, when I look at who succeeds, they've got this rhinoceros hide, and they persist. They persist when most sane people would say, hey, go back to Missouri. You've got credit card debt. You've been trying for years, right? You're never going to make it, right? Listen to your cousin. Listen to your mother. Listen to your accountant who's been telling you for years what a stupid thing it is you're doing. Go back home. You're done. Those people go back home, and guess what? They're done. But the person who doesn't listen, hey, they might end up under a bridge too, because you do need talent. This is not a job for someone who has no talent. But most people, I think, and I'm not sure about anything in life, but from my observation, most people fail because they don't persist. Now, but you have to actually do the work. I know several people who have failed because they want to be writers, but they don't actually write. They think about writing every day, and they say they're writing a script, but they don't actually sit down and write every day. Now those people, they can fail too, because they're really not trying. They have a dream, but they're not trying.
Going back to your own experience where you were slated to write this script, what were some of the excuses that you used, or some of the busy work that you took hold of to keep you away from actually finishing it?
Well,
that you see others doing as an excuse because they're scared or they don't really want to do it, whatever the reason is.
I didn't really know that I wasn't passionate about it. Now, see, I had the dream, but I didn't know that the day-to-day process would be so unrewarding for me. That was what I really finally realized is, I don't really want to do this every day. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't give me any pleasure. It's not my passion. So I had to realize that. I just had a writer tell me that the other day, a beginner who's got a lot of success. He won a contest a year or so ago. And he just told me a month ago, he says, Peter, I don't want to do this. I really don't. I thought I did, but I don't. So sometimes it's really not our dream. And we need to realize that. But what I often see people do is not actually write. This is the most common thing I see. They don't actually produce on the page every day. They say they do. They go to classes. They'll go to seminars. But it's almost like porno for them. They'd rather watch it than do it. If you don't write every day, if you don't sit down for whatever you decide, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, it's hard to write creatively more than 3 hours, by the way. But some people do it. But if you don't actually put words on the page every day, then you can't say I'm a writer. You're never going to succeed that way. And that's what I see more than anything else. I'll get another book on how to do it. I'll go to another class on how to do it. But will I actually sit down and write every day? No, I don't feel like it today. I'm not inspired today. The muse isn't hitting me. That's what I see over and over again that people do to fail. That's a big one.
So this weekend, if you were going to arm a screenwriter with just one weapon or tool, what would that be? What would that one tool or weapon be?
Well, at my school, at How Movies Work in Venice, the one thing I tell beginning writers is, if you want to succeed, you've got to tell a story that you personally love and that matters to you personally, and it has to come out of some deep place in yourself. If you try to write commercially or try to write to the market, you're going to fail. I see it all the time. Oh, I got to write a superhero story, so I'm going to write it. This is true for guys, by the way, who want to write action, who say, I want to be the next Tarantino. I don't care about, Chekhovian character. That doesn't matter to me. I love lasers and guns and stuff. It doesn't matter. I've got 18-year-olds in my classes who can quote every line of Star Wars, which is a 45-year-old movie. And it's not because of the laser fights or even the Wookiee or whatever. It's because the story of Luke was the story of George Lucas. And he passionately wanted to tell the story of a kid from out in the sticks with a great, powerful force inside him that he wasn't using, and he had to go somewhere and change himself and use that gift, the force. That was why that movie succeeded, not because it was a space opera. Passion about your story, the truth about yourself on the page is the most important gift you have as a writer. People say, no, that's not true, Peter. I'm a bore. There's nothing in me that's interesting. And what I say to that is, I bet there's something you did in the last 24 hours that you would hate any of us to see. Some terribly embarrassing thing about yourself, some pain about yourself. You need to write about the pain and pleasure and the dreams you have of your own life. Don't say that's a cliche. Every great movie ever made comes from that passion, comes from the writer's passion and love for that story. There's only 7 stories in the world. They've all been told 1,000 times. The only thing you've got as a writer is your passion, your love, your experience. That's what makes you different than anybody else, and what makes your story different from anybody else. And people I see hipsters who go, that's not true. I'm gonna make a cool story about violence. It's just about guns. It's just about knives. It's about the cool stuff that happens. And I'm gonna say, you're gonna fail. That's not gonna succeed. Tarantino doesn't make movies like that. He makes movies that speak to him from his heart, that are from his secret desires, our secret pleasures, our secret pains. That's what motivates all great story, always, and it always will. That's all you've got as a human being to distinguish yourself from anybody else. So it has to come from there. And you can learn the form. I can teach you the form at how movies work. I can show you the rhythms, but if you don't have them inside of yourself, you're going to get bored and you're going to quit.
So let's say you have a student come back to you and they say, this is it, this is what's inside of me, and you say, you know what, I'm calling BS on this. This isn't really
I do that all the time.
How can you tell? That
Instantly.
Really
Look, well, let me tell you something. Okay, here's another secret about myself. I killed a monkey in high school with a drill. Now, that's not true. And you could tell it's not true. You can tell when somebody's telling you the truth about themselves. You always know. You knew that story about my lips was true. When I read a script and someone tells me about them being a CIA agent in Pakistan and killing somebody, I can tell if they're actually just sitting on their couch in Thousand Oaks and they've never been to Pakistan and they've never been in the CIA. I know instantly when the page is lying. How do you know that? Because we all have this built-in BS detector. When people make stuff up, we know it. When people tell us the truth about their lives, we know it. We can tell, and we're interested. That's the key distinction. I tell you, if you're going to write me a story about a guy in Pakistan who's in the CIA and is a spy, you better have been in Pakistan as a CIA spy or spent about 10 years living in the world of those who did it, or you're going to tell me a story that's going to bore the pants off of me. It's not going to feel real at all. That's how you know. You always tell the truth in a fictional story. You just put it in a rhythm and you expand on it. And if you don't have the gumption to confess the embarrassing truths about yourself, confess them about somebody else that you know really intimately, because everyone's weird and we all know weird things about other people, but they must come from the truth or you will fail. You're going to bore your audience. They're going to know it's not true. That scene I told you about in Superbad, where he confesses that when he was 11, he drew penises in class, and he had a whole lunchbox full of what he called dick drawings. That scene is funny and hilarious, and it's simple. We're sympathetic to this guy because we know the writer that actually happened to the writer. It's excruciating to see it on the screen, but it's got the ring of truth. Why? Because we're all weird. We've done so many weird things in our lives that we've never wanted anybody to know. I have, you have, you have. And that's what we draw on. That's what we want to know about you. That's why gossip is stuff we really want to hear. Oh, you're going to tell me something that's gossip? Oh, I want to hear. Why? Because it's embarrassing, it's true, and it's weird. That's every great story.
What can you tell screenwriters about selling their screenplay?
That it's hard, that to sell your screenplay today, the easiest way to do it is to, well, there's three ways. One is to make a short from your movie. Shorts are sort of becoming the most powerful calling card to get financing, to get seen, and they're almost free. If you can make a short, and I have at How Movies Work, I have a class on how to make a short. And there's a lot of rhythms in a short movie that you don't have anywhere else. You got to be able to make a short from your script, from your feature script to do it. But if you can do a 10-minute short of your script, you can put it up on a website like Thunder Shorts. There's several of them, and this is where sales agents today go. I was on a panel with sales agents the other day. All they do now, they don't even go to film festivals anymore. They just go onto these websites for shorts, and they troll them, and they look for really great short movies that often come from feature-length scripts. And that's how they often buy a story. So that's one great way to sell your script. Make a short from it. If you can't make a short story from it, chances are your script itself isn't going to be very good. That's one way. The other way is just to work this circuit, which is to send this to the agents, to send this to, and don't worry anybody's going to steal your idea. That's a beginner's worry as well. Nobody's going to steal your idea. Chances are very unlikely, because ideas are a dime a dozen. It is your execution of them that makes the story valuable. Not the fact you've come up with this amazing high concept. It's generally, that's not the important part of your story. It's how the story plays out and is executed. So you send them to, you send your scripts to agents, you send your scripts to producers, you send your script to the studios. You do it that way. Getting an agent, it's really important. Look, there were more features made last year than ever. There were 600 features made last year. That's more than there's ever been made, more than ever been released in Hollywood. So it's a myth that the feature world is dying, but it is increasingly difficult to get a independent type movie, like a drama or a small movie, financed by the studios or even by the independents. They buy them at Sundance, or now they buy them from websites. So you have to work around the fact that the traditional ways in which independents were bought, it doesn't happen that much anymore. But you still need to send them out. You still need to email your script. You still need to get it patented with the Library of Congress or through the Writers Guild, and just send it out. Send it out. The more you send it out, the better chances you are someone's going to see it. The last way to do it is to interest a star, especially if you're making a smaller movie. A movie that a lot of the people that probably are coming to these conferences want to make a personal movie, a cool movie about real life, a drama. Stars get these made. I was involved in the development of a book that was never going to make a movie until Brad Pitt. It was a very unusual story, and it wasn't even very good, but it had a great premise. When Brad Pitt got interested in it, because he was sent this story, then for the next 3 years, he just saw it through several directors, a couple that produced. Finally, Scott Rudin took it, and they made a fantastic movie of it. So getting a star interested in your quirky story is a great way. And how do you do that? You just send it to the star's agent. Go to IMDb Pro. You'll see a general email for most of these production companies. It's a myth, by the way, that Hollywood doesn't read stuff that they get over the transom and that's like. It's a myth, because you know who gets that script when at the company? This bored intern chained to their desk for 9 hours a day and wanting nothing more than to get away from that desk by finding the next cool project. Chances are, if you send that script in, even if they go, we never read them, well, we just turn them right around, it's litigation, we can't read them. I'm telling you, because I teach a lot of those people at UCLA Extension, often they do read those scripts. So, and what do you have to lose by sending them into those production companies? Nothing. So what they say they turn them around. A lot of times they read them anyway. That's just the truth.
Suppose you checked your inbox tomorrow morning and you get this email. Dear Peter, I've been selling annuities for 20 years. I'm totally bored. I came to this town to be a screenwriter. I want to quit my job tomorrow, and I have this great script idea.
Happens all the time. In fact, one of my interns right now is a multimillionaire. He's from another country. He just came here 3 months ago because he said, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I've got all the money I want. I want to learn how to tell a Hollywood story. Happens all the time. I say, welcome, come on, here's how it's done. Here's the form. I have people from big law firms in New York all the time going, I'm sick of being a lawyer. I want to come out there, and how do I do it? Because everybody who has a passion to tell a story can wind up here. This is what makes Hollywood what it is. We're losing physical production in this state because the political structure is so stupid. But the intellectual brain trust of story here in LA is amazing. You come out here still, this is still the land of opportunities. If you want to tell a story, look, we make almost 80% of every dollar that is sold in entertainment in the world today. Why? Why does Hollywood make 80 cents of every dollar sold of filmed entertainment in the world today? Why? I'll tell you why. Because we tell the story of a wounded hero with a chance to change. They don't do it in Europe. In France, you know, you live, you die, your life's over, boom, your bully brain's out, that is all, we pee in an alley, we are dead. But in America, we still believe in this hero's journey, this wounded hero who can redeem himself by going somewhere else. And that's why we sell all over the world. That's why they don't love us. They don't love America. God knows they don't. They love our stories. And that's because we understand this myth that is every culture of the world. That guy standing out on his deck when he's 16 and going, I got to get out of here. I got to go somewhere and be something different. That's what we celebrate. That's why we're still powerful. That's why our stories sell. So come here, come to LA. This is the place to be. I mean, it's cool. Why not? I came here. It's what I did. It's still that opportunity for people.
And if they're not a millionaire, have a good savings?
Most of my other interns aren't millionaires at all. They're people working other jobs and they just want to learn stories. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to come here physically, but you do have to learn what Hollywood does, however that is. And luckily, you can just watch a lot of movies and you can just see how it's done. Watch the people you love. Watch the movie over. I'm no smarter than you about movies. All I did is get obsessed. I'll watch a movie 40 times. And at the end of that 40 times, I guarantee you, if you do that, you're going to be a genius. You're going to say, look what he does here. Look what he does here. You know, at how movies work, one of the things I do is I have movie nights where I just say, hey, you love Pulp Fiction? I'll come in. Come on in. We'll view the movie together. I stop it whenever I want. And I say, look what he does here. Look how he does it. Look how he puts ticking clocks in every scene. Look how we got the hero's journey. Look how Jules is the hero. He's an Old Testament hero. Look, the bullets missed him. It's a miracle. And everybody learns by the end of the movie how Tarantino did it. That's how Tarantino learned. He was a kid sitting at home watching movies obsessively. This is how you learn. You're not a genius. You just are obsessed.